instruction, we see increase if the environment is student-centered. Now, if the environment is not so student-centered, so again, there's variability even in the transformations that we've done, then you see a decrease at the end of the semester. So it's not just that there's no effect if you don't create that student-centered environment, is that you actually demotivate the student. There's less perceptions of competence by the end, because the control and the decisions are outside of the self. Makes sense? So it does not foster lifelong learning. And that correlation, if you look at association, is huge. Relationship of 0.70, so it's almost a perfect relationship. So when student-centeredness increase, perceived competence increase by almost a ratio of 1:1. What about doubt, which is also very instrumental? Think about standardized high-stake testing. If the students go in with a lot of fear about their capabilities, they're not going to do well. What about student-centeredness and doubt? Well, same sort of idea. At the end of the semester, in a student-centered environment, doubt significantly decreased. Much more so in the replacement model. So this is the collaborative classroom effect. If it's not student-centered, I think you can guess what's going to happen. Doubt significantly increases. So the students don't feel competent, they feel fearful, they won't do well, even if they can. Other kinds of differences that we look at, just to show you a different model, but here we have knowledge transfer that I have not talked about yet. So do the students do they perceive that they can transfer knowledge? Can they transfer knowledge? In a low student-centered environment, they're significantly less likely to do that than if they're in a high student-centered environment. And those differences are significant here. All of them are. If we look at academic performance, what about grade? Well, same thing with grade. In a higher student-centered learning environment compared to lower student-centered environment, increase in grades. So if you look at courses that are student-centered, so what we did here in this analysis is that we said, okay, all of the other analysis before are centered on the student's perspective. So we had 13,000 students, okay? This is a course level analysis. So we looked at, within a course, how many students perceive the environment to be student-centered. And if 75% or more of the students, so that's a pretty high cut. It's not just 51%. 75% of them said it's student-centered. We categorize that class as student-centered. If 74% of them said it's not, it became non-student-centered. So it's pretty stringent cutoff. In the non-student or low student-centered, it's not really non, it's lower student-centered, the grade point average is right under 3.0, about 2.9, a little bit more than 2.95. And if it's high student-centered, it's above 3.0. So although those numbers might not be looking that different, the meaning is extremely different for students and for administration and for your ability to graduate. If you're in a program like technology or in engineering, that's critical. So we're pretty excited about that one. But the importance of motivation here, and that's what I'm really excited as a scholar, is that, you can't see those lines, there's some arrows here pointing, they're just yellow or green, the color doesn't show up well, is that it's not the active learning model in and of itself. It's not that you use a certain technology, or it's not because suddenly the students are in a collaborative classroom that the effect on student success occurs. And I think that's why you see so much inconsistency in the literature, is that sometimes these redesigns are done well and sometimes they're not. But what we've been able to do as researchers working on this problem, this issue, is that we've defined what well means. Well is that self-determination theory principles have been followed. I mean, that's what we're using, that's what we're measuring. There's 40 years of research, validated scales, but there's various other authors that have talked about that. You know, when we mention student-centeredness, autonomy support, I think that's what we mean also when we say active learning. That's what we're talking about. And this is what mediates that relationship. So done well means that autonomy, competence, relatedness have been fostered. And when that happens, motivation will increase. And when that happens, that's when we get student success. So that's very critical, and we don't see that a whole lot in the literature. So that's and to partner with high schools to do that kind of work would be just phenomenal. Because different way to look at it here. The effect of student-centered learning on success is mediated by these internal processes in students. Increase in competence, lower doubt, increase in knowledge transfer, and the bubble that we could add here is that student-centeredness means autonomy, competence, connectedness. I'll show you some data from Ellen. It's a Stats in Society course. So she has students coming from all kinds of major. I'll just spend a little bit of time on that. Her DFW rate, that means grades of D, Fs, and withdrawal from the class were very high before the redesign, hovering about 20%. Low student engagement, extreme math anxiety. This is what she did in the different models. All the exams are the same across all three modalities. The supplemental class is kind of what I call the supercharged class, because the students can actually watch the lectures online that the hybrid students are required to watch, and they can even go to a recitation. So they have a lot of opportunities in this class. So if you want to know a little bit more about how the hybrid class worked, so every Friday she did an in-class quiz. And the students worked in group prior to that, before they took the quiz. Okay, some results. Same test. If you look at exam 1, in the spring 2012, it's not like she had a bad class. She had high DFW rates, but students were performing okay. But it increased after the redesign, and it continues to get better the more she works on the redesign. So this is the dosage effect, right? As we go through these iterations, it gets better. DFW rate, huge drop. Now she's under 20%, and it was average 20%, but she had semesters where it was like really high, 33%. That class was just a really difficult class. I think because of the variety, the diversity of the students in that class. They also like the course better. So the students are also much happier, much more engaged in the course.